Welcome back to Snippets with Patterns by Jen. Today we are going to be making a round placemat. You will need 25 3.5-inch squares, a 15-inch square for your backing. So if you want 4 placemats, you will need 100 3.5-inch squares and 4 15.5-inch backing squares. You will also need some paper. We're going to need at least a 15.5-inch square, and pencil and a 10-inch strip of cardboard. So go hit your recycling bin quick, and we just need a little piece so we can mark our circle. So we are just going to take these, lay these out in whatever color and order you would like. If you're unsure if you like the way it's going to lay out, you can always take a picture, turn it black and white, and see if the value works together. We're going to go ahead and sew the first row. Just going to line it up, bring it over to the machine like this, and sew. You can sew in pairs however you would like. I'm going to just keep it simple for the beginners in our group and bring this over to the sewing machine, and then we will press and go from there.
So I'm just going to sew this first row, and while I would probably sew this differently with setting up my pairs a little differently, bringing them over from the cutting mat, I am just going to sew one after another in a row, just so that I am not confusing anybody as we are piecing this together. So again, just quickly sewing these together one at a time. If you want to sew in pairs, if you have a different system, go ahead and do that. If you are brand new here, though, and you're new to the sewing and quilting world, I wanted to just keep this as easy as possible, and as I just don't want to confuse you. So I'm just going to go one at a time all the way down the row. Okay, I am going to take this back to the table, and we will go over pressing so that when we are ready to pin these together, they're going to pin up really, really nicely.
All right, so I went ahead and I sewed rows 1 and 2, and we're going to press. Now these we need to press in opposite directions so that they will pin up nicely. And to do that, here's my little trick. So I'm going to start with row 1, and I'm going to just lift it up. I'm going to hit that seam. I'm just going to work my way down the row. And I just want you to note I'm not pushing when I'm bringing my iron over. I'm not pushing down with my iron. I'm just moving it along so the fabric stays with me, and then I'm pushing down. All right, so then the second one here, I started the first one by just lifting it up. Well, this time I'm going to rotate it. Now I'm going to lift up. This is how I know my seams are going to be going the opposite way, because I rotated those. So we're going to go ahead, hit every seam to set those seams, and then come and press down. Okay. Now we need to pin. And so we have rows 1 and 2 here. We're going to flip row 1 over, and we're going to go ahead and pin. I do have a how to pin correctly 2-minute tips with Jen video. I will put that in the description below so that you can see how to do this. It uses red thread and solid colors, and it's just easier to see. But what you're going to do is take your pin. You've locked these seams because they are opposite. You've locked them. They just come in and they snap into place. You can just feel it. So once you can feel that they've locked into place, you come with your pin, you go down on the right, come up on the left of that seam, and that way when you are sewing, you're coming along and you're sewing, you're going to take one stitch over that seam, and then you can pull your pin. And by doing it this way, not only does your seam stay locked in place, because you can leave your pin in there, you can leave your pin and not worry about hitting it with your needle. You're not going to break a needle. You're not going to throw the timing off of your machine. And that way, you are, again, your seams are locked in. They're going to come together really nicely, but you're not worried about what's going to happen to you. You don't have to worry about the pin. You can leave it in instead of take it out early. So what happens when we pull our pin out too early is we lose those points coming together. You have you sewn and then you open up and they have moved, right? But you pulled the pin out early because you didn't want to go over the pin with your sewing machine, break a needle or anything like that. If you pin this way, you can take that one stitch over that seam, then pull your pin. It's still locked in place. It acts like the pin, so you can pull your pin and not have to worry about going over it. So I'll take you over to the machine and I will show you what I mean over there. But again, I will have the link to the 2-minute tips. It shows you with the red thread. It gets nice and close and you can watch it there.
All right, so let's sew rows 1 and 2. And I'll just show you quickly how and when I pull these pins. So we've pinned right to left. We're gonna come up to this seam right here. We're going 1 stitch over. I think that landed on my seam, so I'm going to go 1 more stitch. Now I'm going to go ahead, pull that pin out because I've locked that stitch in place with this new seam. So again, we're just going to come up, take care of that seam under there. And my guide here catches on those pins, so that's why I'm lifting my foot a little bit more than you might have to. But then we're going to go ahead, come to 1 stitch past that seam allowance to lock it in place, and then take my pin out, and that way we are not going over that pin and risking a broken needle or throwing the timing off on our machine. So that's why I like to pin this way. It just it works to keep the seams together nicely, but it also helps keep the needles and pins from coming together and making a bad situation. So, all right, we'll go press.
All right, we are going to press, and we're just going to hit with a hot iron first. And then with all of these seams, I'm going to go ahead and finger press first. Please be careful. We did just hit this with a hot iron, so don't burn your fingers. Just flip and just give it a quick, gentle finger press so you can feel that seam under there is flipping over nicely. And then give it a good press. Okay, and that way we've got a nice press on the back. We'll do that for every row, and then our next step will be getting that circle. Okay, so I have already taped together my paper. So I just used 4 sheets of computer paper, taped it together. I wrote on here so I wouldn't forget to tell you when we're putting this circle on our fabric, we'll be doing it on the wrong side. So I've taped mine together already. You need a piece of cardboard, and we are going to just pick a spot, doesn't really matter, just towards one end where you are going to put your pin. So you have a little pin mark. And from that pin, you want to measure 7 1/4 inch from that pin. And mark that. And that is where we want to very carefully punch a hole. And just kind of make it round so your marking utensil can sit in there, okay? So now, using your pin, put that right in the center of your paper, right where those, where that paper comes together. And using your marking utensil, we're just going to draw that circle all the way around. Okay, once that's done, use your paper scissors, not your fabric scissor, and cut that out right on the line. Once that is cut out, we are going to mark the circle on our backing fabric. It's easier to do it on that rather than the front because the front is pieced. So we are going to mark this circle on the backing. And I have done this already, but you'll want to fold it in half and give it a press, and then turn it, fold it in half, give it a press, and that will give you your center. And you want your circle to match up along those lines. And the reason that this is important is because we're going to be sewing on this line, but we're still going to need 1/4 of an inch around the outside of it so that we can trim that off. So we want to make sure that we are in that center line, okay? And then you're just going to go ahead and draw a circle all the way around with your marking utensil. Okay, and once you are done with that, and you can see that you've got it all the way around, we're going to add it to our square. So here is our pieced top. We're going to go right sides together. So this circle is marked on the wrong side of your fabric. And we're going to line this up. And now you're going to try and eyeball or maybe fold this center as well so you can find it here. And you want to put a pin in that center. And we're just going to put pins in a couple of spots here. And that is because, again, we want to make sure we are going to have that 1/4 of an inch. But we also need to make sure that we're getting 1/4 of an inch on the front as well. So we don't want this to move as we are sewing. So we're just going to put a couple of pins around. All right, and then once you have these in place, then because we are going to turn this right side out when we're done, we need to leave an opening. And as I always do, I have to leave myself a reminder. So I'm going to go ahead, pick a spot. And I like to pick a spot that I'm not going to be dealing with seams. So that's a wide enough opening that's not going to give me an issue when we're done. And so I'm just going to start here and stop there. So we will just sew right on that line. We're not sewing 1/4 of an inch or anything. This is our sewing line, so we're going to sew right on that.
Next, we are going to sew on this line that we just drew. And I'm just going to line up that line in my presser foot line there. I'm going to take a couple of stitches, do some locking stitches here. And I'm just going to sew all the way around, go as slow or as fast as you need to go, keeping that line right in the middle so you are sewing exactly on this line. The drawn line is our stitching line. And I'm just going to go all the way around. Okay, I'm coming to my pin that is reminding me that I need to leave an opening, so I am going to go ahead and take some locking stitches. If you don't have that button, you can just take a few back stitches to lock those stitches in place. And I just like to do that so that it holds a little better here. So we will go to the table, trim this down to a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and press.
With that sewn, we are ready to trim off that extra fabric and give ourselves that 1/4 inch. And just eyeball this. You do not have to worry if the 1/4 inch is perfect or not. You don't want to get too close. We do want to give ourselves that 1/4 inch line, but you don't need to have, this does not need to be a perfect measurement by any means. So we're just going to go ahead and trim it all the way around. Okay. Take the pins out. And then we will flip this out and press. So, And once you open it up, just go ahead and pull this through. So again, just like I do with squares, I like to go all the way to the opposite side, get that edge, and start pulling that through, and the rest will follow. All right, now this is a little different because it is a circle. So you are just, all I do is I take my finger and I am just going to run it along the seam to kind of pull those seams out. Since we're not really, we don't have to poke any corners out or anything, but we do want that fabric to come out, and so that we can press it nicely. So I just kind of run my finger, try and get it out evenly before we press. And we will still go around and kind of manipulate it a little bit, if you will, but we're gonna, just using my finger like that will give us a good start. Okay, so we're gonna press. So for this, we're gonna do the same thing we do anytime we turn something out and we need to press. We're gonna go take the fabric between our fingers and just kind of rub it back and forth until we get that edge to the outside. And then we'll hit that with a hot iron. And I'm gonna start kind of by the edge where that's open, and just go ahead, go back and forth. And I'm gonna work in smaller sections because it is a curved edge. Hit it with a hot iron. And just go all the way around, just like this. Going back and forth so that edge comes out nice and even. Hit it with that iron and move on to the next square. I think if you go slowly and take it square by square, 2 squares by 2 squares, depending on how your curve is behaving, I think that just makes it easier, and your edges will be cleaner if you just take the time to just go slowly and not try to get the whole circle all at one time. All right, and now we are to this opening, and we're going to just kind of flip these in and then press. Now, because it's a curved seam, I do this a little differently than I do a flat seam, where when it's a flat, straight seam, I can just let the pressed seams around it do its job and let it, and help it fold like it's supposed to. But because it's curved, it doesn't really do that. So when it's a curved seam, I like to go ahead and get it in place first and then hit them both at the same time. And that way we have it nice and even. All right, so our next step is to go ahead and top stitch, and we are done and have some fun circle placemats.
So my usual stitch length, my piecing stitch length is a 2.0. For the top stitching, I bump it up to a 3.0, and that's just to give it a nice finish. I'm going to keep my presser foot, so I'm doing about 1/8 of an inch from the edge for my top stitching. And we're just going to go ahead and go around. I'm starting where the opening is so that I can make sure that gets shut right away. And then I'm just going to go all the way around. Go as slow as you need or as fast as you want as you do this last finishing step of our round placemats. Okay, and now as I come to my starting point, I'm going to just hold that out and make sure that I go over those stitches. And I'm going to take a few back stitches and lock those up, and our placemat is done.
Top stitched and done. I hope you enjoyed this quick little tutorial. I think they are so fun. A different shape to make a pretty table. Come back in 2 weeks for the next Snippets with Patterns by Jen. We are going to actually step into quilting. We have been working on our pressing and sewing our straight seams, and now we are going to start with some basic quilting, we're going to make a wall hanging, and I'm going to walk you through cutting and all the way to binding. I hope you come back in 2 weeks for the start of that project. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. Go make something you love.